How is tech reshaping your kids' world and your parenting role? Dr. Mike reveals relatable coping skills to help you nurture your own fulfillment alongside your family life. Stay tuned. Welcome to Fulfillment Therapy. I'm Kendra Nielsen, wife, mom, and licensed therapist. Do you ever feel like you're doing everything right, but you're still exhausted and empty? Did you think life, marriage, and parenting would be simpler and more rewarding? Sometimes you just want to crawl back into bed and lose yourself in screen time and chocolate, rather than face that personal or family stress. You are not alone. This podcast helps you break free of the rat race and build a richer, more meaningful life, flourishing incrementally and realistically, improving your mental health and wellness, and living with deeper purpose beyond the mundane, no matter where you are in life's journey. Do you have any insight with your background clinically and also just as a parent on steps that we can take, maybe exploring those boundaries, what we can do where we're not becoming that helicopter parent necessarily, but we are setting up our families for success and not tipping to the side of over controlling, but also not being too passive?
Yeah, it's super hard, right? That's my first thought, is that balance is so difficult because, we can criticize the helicopter parents all we want, but the reason some people are so uber involved in fixing everything for their kids is because in some ways they're pretty realistic about how messed up our world is. And so what a lot of helicopter parents are trying to do is save their kids from what they feel like is pretty dire consequences in a world that's never been as complicated as it is right now. So I understand why some parents can get so overinvested in saving their kids. But when you look at the data on it, the more we save our kids and the more we live in that fear of what could happen or what might happen, the worse our kids do. I think that's a hard stat. It's a hard outcome to be honest about, but it's reality. The reason that some kids are having such a hard time launching into adulthood is because they've never really learned how to fail. And that's super difficult for a lot of parents. So I love the research that they've done with kids on the value of failure. So my favorite is they took a bunch of parents and kids to an ice skating rink. And essentially the parents just thought they got some free ice skating and that was it. But really it was a research study where they weren't measuring what the kids did. They were measuring the response of the parents. So they would have pictures. You got an ice skating rink, you got a ring. All the parents are standing around watching their kids ice skate. And parents had very different responses. Any kid that's ever ice skated for the first time, you know how this goes. Like they crash and burn. They bust it, right? It's not a normal activity. You have to learn how to ice skate. And so some parents, when their kid would fall, you got a little 5-year-old or 6-year-old that falls on the ice. What do the helicopter parents do? Oh my gosh, Johnny, are you okay, buddy? A lot of them are like walking out on the ice. They're like coddling the kid. Oh, come here. It's going to be okay. Let me help you scrape your knee. That's awful. Come here. We'll bandage you up. And they would just make sure that they were absolutely 1000% comfortable trying to learn how to ice skate.
Yeah.
Then you had a whole nother group of parents. And that group of parents, they'd watch their kid fall. And either they would just reserve their response, like, okay, it's a wait and see approach. Or some of them would even encourage the failure. Johnny, dude, you busted it. That was a good one. Way to go, pal. You got it now. You got this. And either the ones that sort of just let things happen or the ones who actively encouraged, take risks, fail. It's okay to fail. Those parents had a completely different outcome with the quality of their kids' ability to learn how to ice skate. Is that crazy? The parents that rushed in, to save the kids. Let me cushion your falls. Let me make sure you're okay. Let me actually make it a big deal if you don't know how to do something. Those kids, they had a hard time learning how to skate. The kids whose parents allowed them to fail, who even encouraged failure, were the very parents who had the kids who left the ice skating rink with some ability to be able to ice skate. Man, you talk about such relevance for us. The more we free our kids up to fail, the more able they're going to be able to function in everyday life, the more successful they're going to be later on. High control, high savior complex as a parent. I've got to save my kid from whatever outcome they're going to develop or whatever problem they could have. The longer it takes for them to launch into adulthood, the more you just free your kid up. The expectations is to go out and do your best, let your best be enough. The more those kids were able to just function, make progress, go to college, get good jobs, launch into the world, and make a difference. And that's the ultimate goal of parenting, right? The ultimate goal of parenting is not to have super safe kids, not even to have super good kids. Crazy as that is, I know that might be a hot take too. Having good kids is overrated. What's important is launching an 18 or 19-year-old into the world that can function spiritually, relationally, that can go out and make good choices. To me, that's success as a parent. And if we could all understand that kind of success requires the ability for children to fail, to appropriately learn how to manage failure, then it really does free us up from needing to save them every second of every day.
Mike, I gotta reiterate some of those things because you had so many good points. Love them. Want to go over them just another time. You talked about how important it is to take those risks, which I'm 100% behind, and how it's very hard to allow your kids to fail. I could tell you, I'm sure you could do the same. Hundreds of stories how that can be very difficult. You want to jump in and be that person, especially like your youngest, and how it's so much harder to learn with the story that you told. He also talked about how success that you feel, and I second this too, is are they spiritually able to go out into the world and manage that, improve spiritually, relationally, otherwise. I have a daughter that just went to college, and these are the things that we're seeing her learn. Many of those things we can't teach her to a degree anymore, but we're so excited for her. She's launched, she's left, and that is such a big problem in our culture right now. They're so afraid to do that. Watching that and talking with her through those things. The risk thing reminded me of something too, how we have often overcorrected trying to help our kids, but then we end up doing more harm, like in the case of your story. Listens to all these things. He's a psychiatrist and he is really passionate about exposing your kids to risks, but in a somewhat healthy way. But he's, here, little kid, here's a power tool, and he'll help them and stuff. But he's the extreme, and I really appreciate it. So we went up into the mountains with them this weekend, and they're all just like busting down this snow hill onto the top of a frozen river, but it's barely frozen. And there's like a little stream, I would say, that's just fully thawed completely. Like you're going through this water. It's flying everywhere. And I'm like, this is surely one of those things that is not safe. But he's very much, well, just try it out. If they fall in, it's only waist deep. They'll be fine. So I'm like, okay, we're doing this. So all of the adults with the kids are just doing these things where it's very much connecting, but also letting go instead of just like taking calculated risks, but not living in fear so much, teaching them to fail, teaching them to learn for themselves. I feel like I want to pick your brain about so many of these things, but we talked a little bit about anxiety. You mentioned other days that you love to teach. What else do you see with parents is something that they could lean into a bit more or learn that might help them in their parenting journey when it comes to raising more spiritually or relationally successful kids?
All right. So I had two answers for that question. The one is more practical. I think where we really struggle is boundaries. We really confuse what boundaries actually are as parents. We believe I'm going to set a boundary. And what that means is now my kid is going to choose to follow some rule that I've set. And that's actually not a boundary. A boundary does not require anything from the person that we're setting the boundary with. Let me give you an example and kind of clarify. So maybe I'm going to go in and I'm going to try to set a boundary with my 10-year-old on video games and dinner, right? I want my kid to come to the dinner table when dinner's ready. So I'm going to go in and say, hey, buddy, dinner's ready. I need you to turn that video game off and go ahead and come to dinner. So if you don't mind, just turn that thing off. We're going to eat in about 3 minutes. That's a request, right? It would be awesome if your kid got up, turned off the video game, and came to dinner. That'd be amazing, right? That's typically not what a 10-year-old's going to do, because you actually just gave your 10-year-old a choice. And the choice was, would you like to come to dinner, or would you like to play your video game? Would you please turn it off? The answer to that is no, I will not turn it off. I'm going to continue to play my video game. That's what most 10-year-olds are going to choose, right? It's not a boundary, it's a request. The boundary would be, you walk into the living room and say, hey, man, dinner's in 5 minutes. I know you're in the middle of a big Fortnite game or whatever. So either you turn the console off and you're at the dinner table in 5 minutes, or I'm going to walk in, turn the console off, and take the cord. Either way, you're coming to dinner. But that's the boundary. So you can see that boundary doesn't require the kid to do anything. If the kid chooses, screw this, I'm playing my video game. This is a big game. I'm with my friends. I've got to finish it. That doesn't really matter, because you've already communicated. I'm setting the boundary. My boundary is that cord belongs to me. I pay for that electricity. That thing's going off in 5 minutes. Very big difference. So we need to understand the difference between requests and boundaries with our kids, because that's the very thing that allows us just to give them choices. That's love and logic parenting. I don't know if you've looked at that much, but I love love and logic, because it gives kids choices. They can make choices and they can deal with the consequences of their choices. That's how the world works. Like, the world is based on me making wise choices and me paying the consequences for my choices. I just saw this morning that there was a kid here in Florida that got arrested on Interstate 95 going 112 miles an hour. Florida has a new super speeder law. So anybody that goes over a certain number of miles an hour and gets caught, they go directly to jail. That's called choices, right? If I choose to be a super speeder, then I run the risk of actually going to jail. Like that. And so I've got to make choices and then deal with the consequences of my choices. That's how the world works. That kid figured that out pretty quickly. That's what we need to train our kids to do, is make choices and then deal with the consequences. If I don't turn the console off and do it on my terms and tell my friends goodbye and I've got to run it, then I'm going to have this console turned off on me, and it's going to happen to me, and that's my choice. So that's number one. My second answer to the question is much deeper, because I think we can talk all day about the little nuances and how to draw boundaries with technology or video games or friends or schoolwork or whatever. But our main goal as parents is to produce an 18 or 19-year-old one day that knows how to function, that knows how to live in the shadow of God who's bigger than he is, that knows what his value system is, or what her real desires are and what her calling is, right? Like, that's success. And we need to spend way more time modeling that to our kids, minute by minute, moment by moment. Faith can't be something that we do occasionally. It can't be something that we do on Sundays. Hey guys, let's go to church for an hour. And all those things are good, right? I'm not saying it's bad, but I'm saying your faith as a parent needs to trickle down into every aspect of what you do. Every interaction needs to be saturated with the idea of, how do I expose my kid to my process and my value system? How do I let them in on how I make decisions in the shadow of a God that's bigger than me? Like, how does that look? And as we do that, it really does become a game changer for our kids. And that actually should trickle down into the value systems that you're working on minute by minute as a family. They should know what your value system is. Our family, man, we know that it's God, faith, family. Like, that's the order in which we approach life. And the opportunity I have to talk about that and to expose that, I'm going to do it.
Oh, so many great things. And you did that here, just standing for what you believe in and bringing that even into the work environment. I wish more people would do that more. And I think it goes back to, again, that passive versus that assertive parent, or being very present, very intentional. And that's so hard to do. Again, speaking from experience, I can just hear my 15-year-old boy saying over and over again, even though I try to be very intentional about what I do, but that's so controlling. You never let me do what I want to do. And I have to have this conversation over and over again. Yeah. We really try to get them a collaboration, talk to them, but ultimately our kids are usually going to choose Cheetos and video games and not going to church or school. Let's be honest.
Yeah. And can you blame them? That's in a 14-year-old head, that makes a lot of sense. My dad was so intentional to pray for me. And that sounds weird and kind of out there, but in our family, that was just how it was. It was we prayed, right? So every day, for as long as I could remember as a kid, there was some point in the day where my dad would come up to me, when I was a kid, and when I going to bed, bedtime prayers, But when I got older, it could be at any moment during the day. He's going to get it in. Hey, come here one sec. He put his hand on me. God, thank you for mine. Thank you for saving. Give him just a sense of your calling today, whatever it was. Just it was, we're going to bring the idea that you live in the shadow of this God that's bigger than you, Mike, into your minute by minute, moment by moment. So sometimes I was super annoying, staggeringly annoying for some 16-year-old kid. I remember I'd be trying to go out on a Friday night. I had my wheels, right? I got a car, and I was like, man, this is going to be a big night. This is not going to tell you what I'm doing, but I'm out of here. And he's, hey, come here. Literally walking out the door to go mix it up with my boys, right? And he put his hand on me. God, thank you for Mike. Thank you for his heart for you. Thank you for giving him leadership and guidance tonight. I'm like, oh my gosh, would you please shut up? This is the last thing I want to hear right now when I'm thinking, who knows what could happen tonight? I've got all these things, but you know what? So many times that centered me and grounded me and reminded me of who I was. And yeah, maybe it's a little weird, maybe a little out there, but it worked. And what's crazy is I had kids, and intuitively, I don't even know where this started. I can't remember a moment where I intentionally said I was going to do this, but I found myself every day, some point during the day, put my hand on my kid and I say, God, thank you for my son. Thank you for his life. Thank you for your call on his life. I've been praying for my kids almost every day that God would use them to do something significant, to build the kingdom, to do something that mattered with their life every day. And so I think the power of that, you're literally infusing faith. My dad didn't even know what he was doing, but he was infusing in me the idea that the central part of our family, the central part of my life, needed to be something that was beyond that night, beyond the decision I was going to make in 30 minutes or an hour, but it needed to be eternal.
Mike, what I love about this is it's something that's really not talked about unless it's a Christian setting. And I want to get away from that culture so much more, the Stoics or just improving your character. That stuff isn't really talked much about anymore. And I love your examples, your stories, how that models for us what that can look like. I know some of us have different value systems, faith, but we all want more for our children. We want more in our relationship and otherwise. And these are such beautiful ways to talk about how we can break away from the culture that is honestly sick and unhealthy, and scaling back from some of those things that increase anxiety, depression, they part of that mental health crisis. A lot of these things that you talked about earlier, or tech escapism that we go to avoid some of these issues. But how are we going to live intentionally? How are we going to create better boundaries? How are we going to model for our kids what is going to bring that lasting peace and joy? I'm very grateful for the things that you've talked about, even those 1 and 2 things, and bringing it back to your value system. Just beautifully said. And I wish I could have you on for so much longer. I guess if you were to think about everything that we talked about today, or the things that you've seen, Is there anything else you'd like to touch on before we end today? What has really brought you lasting fulfillment and really helped your family life?
I think if I had to leave it with one more principle, it would be this. Anxiety lives in the future. What if? What if this happened? What if that happens? Depression lives in the past. Why regret this? Why did I do that? And it happened to me and it's so painful or hurtful or whatever. My goal every day is to say, okay, how can I be present right here, right now? I've become so comfortable with the ideas that there's a whole lot I can't control. I like to think I can control a lot. I like to think that if I do all the strategies, my kids are going to turn out okay. And if I do all the things I know I should do, then my marriage will be good. Truth is, a whole lot I can't control. What I can do is I can do the next healthy thing right here, right now. So living in the moment that God has given me, just allowing myself to say, okay, I'm going to focus on what beauty I can find today in this moment. There's such connection to something bigger than I am to say, okay, you know what? There are moments where, life does suck. There are moments where things do not turn out well. There are moments where people drive me crazy. It's just reality. But if I can, in spite of the frustrations and the lack of my expectations being met and the lack of my life reflecting in a given moment what I hope it reflects, if I can just hang on to the idea there's beauty in it, there's beauty in all of it. And if I can find that and I can live in that, and if your listeners, your viewers can just hold on to that piece, and I'd really encourage you guys, look for moments of beauty today, even in the midst of whatever struggle is going on, even in the midst of what's not going right. Look for the beauty that comes out of the ashes. I promise you that's where the peace is. That's where the hope is. That's where the joy is.
That's a beautiful place to end, and I second everything that you say. But just letting go of that, there's a lot that you can't control, and focusing on that next healthy thing, that presence, that surrender. And I think that in this phase of life, that's very much my focus, being present, being mindful, letting go, and just simply building those relationships in a more positive way. Definitely not easy. In the beginning of having children, it was all about doing the right thing and definitely more strict and structured. And now it's all about the relationship and checking in with them, having that loving, connecting time with not only your kids, but your spouse, and being more present in those moments. Definitely not as easy as I thought it would be, but I think we're all learning a little bit moment by moment. But thank you so much for coming on the show with us today. You had such incredible things to share that I know will touch viewers and listeners, and we really appreciate you being on. And is there anywhere else we can find resources or anything else that you...
I was thinking just a few minutes ago when we were talking, a lot of what we talked about today, I included these strategies in a challenge that we did on Live Well Coaching called Pathway to Parenting. So I think what we can do is we'll make that challenge free for every listener. For anybody that's watching this podcast, maybe if we can put in the show notes, just a link directly to that challenge. You could sign up for the platform. And if you're interested in anything that we talked about today, that challenge will give you really cool. It's a video. It's maybe like a 10-minute video every day. That's just quick and dirty. But then it also gives you one thing to do differently every day for 14 days. What's one thing I can do as a parent that's just a little bit different, that shifts my strategy just a little bit? And over time, you string 14 days together, promise you it'll yield some positive results for you as a parent, and I hope in your family. So I'd like to make that available to everybody. If you guys just want to go in the show notes, we'll get that downloaded for you guys. Everybody can have it for free and you can just check it out.
Well, thank you so much. Yeah, I'll make sure that I'll get that in there so they have access to that as well. So,
take care. Have a good day.
I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Dr. Mike as much as I did. If you did, please share this YouTube episode or podcast episode today with a friend that you know it might. You can also sign up for our weekly emails or group at fulfillmenttherapy.org to keep prioritizing your self-care and family joy. We'll see you back here every Monday with a new episode. Until then. Hey friends, if you enjoyed this episode, a quick 30-second share can help someone else find support and help this podcast grow. Leaving a review on Apple Podcasts boosts visibility and keeps the show alive. Your simple acts make a big difference. I'll see you back here each week for more life-changing episodes.